Captain Klaus Hoffman had led mountain rescue operations in the Swiss Alps for 18 years, commanded one of Europe's most elite alpine rescue teams, and trained with the best mountaineering schools in Switzerland and France. When he was assigned to evaluate an international mountain rescue exchange program that included participants from tropical countries, his skepticism was immediate. During the orientation in Zermatt, he reviewed the roster and stopped at one name: Miguel Santos, Philippine National Mountaineering Team, a Filipino mountaineer. Klaus said to the program coordinator, "With respect, the Philippines has no alpine environment. They have tropical mountains, jungle terrain, completely different conditions. Alpine rescue requires specific training in snow, ice, avalanche response, extreme cold. How can someone from a tropical country possibly contribute to alpine operations?" The coordinator, familiar with Klaus's reputation for excellence and his lack of patience for anything less, tried to explain. "Captain Hoffman, Mr. Santos, has extensive high-altitude experience. He's summited several Himalayan peaks, has rescue experience." Klaus interrupted. "Himalayan climbing and alpine rescue are different disciplines. I'm sure Mr. Santos is a competent tropical mountaineer, but he lacks the alpine-specific training necessary for serious rescue work in these conditions. I won't put my team at risk to accommodate someone who doesn't have proper qualifications." Miguel, standing nearby in the briefing room, heard every word. He said nothing, just nodded politely when introduced. He'd heard variations of this his entire climbing career, that tropical mountaineers weren't real alpinists, that Philippines couldn't produce serious climbers, that without snow and ice in their backyard, Filipinos lacked necessary skills. What Klaus didn't know was Miguel's background. He'd grown up in Benguet, climbing mountains before he could read, learning from his grandfather who'd been a trail guide. By 16 he was leading climbs on Mount Pulog. By 25 he'd summited Everest, Makalu, and Manaslu. He'd developed a reputation for improvised problem-solving in mountains, when gear broke, when conditions changed, when standard techniques failed. Filipino mountaineers, lacking the resources and infrastructure of wealthy climbing nations, learned to adapt, improvise, survive with whatever they had. But Miguel knew trying to explain this to Klaus would be pointless. He'd prove himself through action, or not at all. The exchange program began with training exercises in moderate alpine conditions. Miguel performed competently in snow and ice techniques, though Klaus noted he used some unconventional methods, rope systems that looked improvised but worked. Climbing techniques adapted from tropical mountaineering that seemed unorthodox but effective. "He's adequate," Klaus told the coordinator after the first week. "But in a real emergency, with lives at stake, I'd want someone with proper alpine training." The coordinator noted Klaus's assessment and said nothing. Then came the emergency. A research team working on the Aletsch Glacier had been caught in an unexpected avalanche. 4 scientists were trapped in a crevasse system, injured, one critically. Weather was deteriorating rapidly, winter storm approaching, with wind speeds that would ground helicopters within hours. Klaus's team was activated immediately. Standard protocol: helicopter insertion to the glacier, locate the trapped team, stabilize injuries, extract before the storm hit. They had maybe 4 hours. Miguel, as part of the exchange program, was included in the response team over Klaus's objections. They moved into the crevasse field slowly, professionally, exactly as trained. But 30 minutes in, disaster struck. Klaus, leading the first rope team, stepped on what appeared to be solid snow. It was a thin bridge over a hidden crevasse. The snow collapsed. Klaus and his rope partner, Andreas, plunged into the crevasse. The rope caught them after a 10-meter fall, but now Klaus's team had become part of the rescue problem. 8 people were trapped, the original 4 scientists deeper in the crevasse system. Now Klaus and Andreas dangling in another crevasse, all while the storm closed in and helicopter extraction became impossible. Miguel interrupted firmly. "Captain, your protocols require solid snow or ice for anchors. We don't have that. The avalanche debris is unconsolidated. Your anchors will keep failing. I have experience with unstable mountain conditions from Philippine volcanoes, slopes, loose rock, similar problems. Different environment, same physics. I can build an anchor system that will work, but you must trust me." Klaus, hanging in space, watching his team struggle and fail repeatedly with standard methods, faced a choice: Trust his training and protocols that weren't working, or trust a tropical mountaineer he'd dismissed as unqualified? Do it, Klaus said finally. But if this fails, Miguel was already moving. What he did next looked chaotic to the Swiss team but was actually sophisticated improvisation. Instead of trying to anchor in the unstable snow, he created a distributed load system using multiple point-size axes buried horizontally in more stable snow layers deeper down. Ropes wrapped around embedded rocks the avalanche had exposed, even the team's skis buried vertically and connected in a web pattern. He connected everything with prusik hitches and running belays, creating a system where load was distributed across dozens of small anchor points, rather than depending on a few large ones. Klaus shook his head. You're suggesting we cross known avalanche debris and unstable bridges? That's suicide. One collapse, and we're all trapped. Miguel's expression was serious. Captain, in Philippine mountains, we often face impossible choices and unstable volcanic slopes, monsoon mudslides, terrain that by textbook standards is impassable. We learn to read terrain differently, to move through dangerous conditions, by understanding how instability behaves. I can see patterns in this snow, in how the avalanche debris settled, that tell me where we can cross and where we can't. It's not textbook alpine safety, but it will get us to the trapped team in time. Every instinct Klaus had screamed, this was wrong. You don't cross unstable terrain, you follow protocols. You minimize risk. But looking at the situation rationally, following protocols meant the trapped scientists would die, and his own team might not survive the storm either. Miguel's insane anchor system had worked when their protocols failed. Lead the way, Klaus said. But if you're wrong about this terrain reading, Miguel was already studying the snow. Captain, if I'm wrong, we die. So I will not be wrong. But they were still far from base camp with the storm now upon them, visibility dropping to zero, wind making movement almost impossible. Klaus tried to navigate by GPS, but the whiteout was complete. They couldn't see landmarks, couldn't orient themselves, and trying to move in these conditions risked getting more lost or walking over a crevasse edge. We shelter here, Klaus decided. Wait out the storm. Miguel shook his head. Captain, the injured scientist won't survive a night in these temperatures. We must move now. Let me navigate. Klaus stared at him. Navigate? You can't see anything. GPS is useless in whiteout. How? Miguel smiled slightly. Captain, in Philippine mountains, we navigate through typhoons where rain is so heavy you cannot see your hand in front of your face. We learn to navigate by reading wind, by feeling terrain through our feet, by sensing slope angles and counting paces. This storm is bad, but I've climbed through worse in zero visibility. Trust me one more time. Klaus, watching the injured scientist's condition deteriorate and knowing they were out of options again, nodded. Miguel took the lead, navigating through absolute whiteout, using skills that seemed impossible. He felt wind direction to maintain bearing, counted paces to estimate distance, sensed slope angles through his feet to know when they were deviating from the route. The Swiss team followed, unable to see anything, trusting completely in a Filipino mountaineer they'd dismissed 12 hours earlier. 2 hours later, they stumbled into base camp. All 12 people alive there for trapped scientists. Klaus and Andreas who'd fallen in the crevasse, the entire rescue team. Against all probability, they'd survived. The injured scientist was rushed to medical care and survived. When the storm cleared and Klaus wrote his incident report, he did something that took more courage than any mountain climb. He told the complete truth. He detailed how standard alpine protocols had failed, how the Filipino mountaineer he'd called unqualified had improvised solutions that saved 12 lives. How tropical mountain skills had proven more effective than Swiss alpine training in extreme conditions. Captain Hoffman, your report is unusual, his commander said. You're essentially saying our training was inadequate. Klaus nodded. Sir, our training is excellent for standard conditions, but Miguel Santos showed me that there are other ways to read mountains, other solutions to impossible problems, developed by climbers who've been surviving in different extreme environments. His improvised anchors, his terrain reading, his whiteout navigation, none of it was in our protocols. All of it worked when our protocols failed. We need to learn from these different approaches, not dismiss them because they're not European. The incident sparked changes in alpine rescue training. Swiss teams began studying improvised anchor systems. terrain reading from volcanic environments, navigation techniques from tropical mountaineers. Miguel was invited back, not as an exchange participant, but as an instructor, teaching Swiss rescuers the adaptive skills he'd learned in Philippine mountains. And Klaus, who'd said Filipinos lacked alpine training, became Miguel's strongest advocate, co-teaching courses on adaptive mountain rescue techniques. I spent 18 years believing proper mountaineering meant Swiss training and alpine protocols, he'd tell students. Then a Filipino mountaineer with inadequate training saved my life, and 11 others by knowing things my training hadn't taught me. The best mountaineers aren't those who follow one nation's protocols perfectly. They're those who've learned to survive any mountain anywhere, and sometimes those skills come from tropical peaks we didn't respect until they saved us in the Alps.